Good afternoon and welcome to today's episode of Ask the Expert, the series produced by the Alumni Relations team at Queen's, in which we speak to colleagues from across the university on a range of subjects and give you the opportunity to ask your key questions. On today's episode, I'm very happy to welcome Sarah Lynch, the Environmental Manager from Queen's, who will be speaking to us about some of the initiatives the university is running and answering your questions on what you can do to go green and live a more sustainable life. Sarah, it's great to have you here. Thank you very much for joining us. It's an episode I've been looking forward to, and I'm sure there'll be a lot of interest from the attendees today. It's great, as I say, great to have you here.
Thanks very much, Andy. It's a pleasure to be here and to give input to this. My name is Sarah Lynch. I am the Environmental Manager within Queen's, and I'm based in the Estates Directorate, and I lead the environmental team. We, along with our colleagues in the energy team, deliver a number of programmes across the university to embed positive environmental improvements from infrastructure projects. The area that I'm most directly involved with is encouraging staff and students to take on more positive environmental behaviours and help our staff and students come up with their own initiatives and their own programmes to drive action for the environment in their areas.
Could you give us some examples of some of those initiatives that you would be involved with in terms of the work that you do with students and staff?
Yeah, over the past 10 years, a big focus of what we've been trying to do is to reduce our carbon emissions as a university. So we were set a target to reduce our carbon emissions by 21% by 2020. And last year, we're really delighted to see that we had achieved that. Now, that was just looking at our emissions associated with our electricity and our energy consumption. And as part of that, we delivered a number of infrastructure projects. We installed combined heat power plants to reduce our emissions. We implemented a number of energy efficiency schemes across the university where we were replacing less energy efficient kit with more energy efficient kit to make our buildings more energy efficient. And more directly, what I have been involved in is trying to engage with our staff and our students. So we have a network of sustainability champions across the university that sit at a variety of different levels and with a variety of different areas. And we also have a network of student champions which we build on each year who go through an accredited Degree Plus employability programme which helps them identify and deliver programmes on campus to reduce environmental impact, but also then adds on to the degree and supports their employability skills. And some of the projects this year, for example, that we've been involved in is the Lennoxville Tree Nursery, where we've been working with the Residents Association there. We've been working with Student Society, Green at Queen's, some of our student volunteers, some of our staff and conservation volunteers to establish a tree nursery where we are contributing to a wider project called the Belfast Million Trees Project.
Wow, that certainly sounds like you have a lot to keep you occupied then, in that sense. You mentioned the initiative for students to become, what was it, environmental champions, is that right?
Yeah, it's an environmental leadership programme which we run each year. So our students sign up for it and they undertake a number of volunteering hours, but they also undertake a number of workshops to develop their skills, their leadership skills, their project management skills. And I guess the key thing about it is we're encouraging them to take action. So this isn't just things that they can theoretically do to help the environment, or this is things that they can actually do on Queen's campus. And alongside our environmental leadership programme last year, we were lucky to be able to establish a green fund. So that was £20,000 available to staff and students to apply for green initiatives that they could deliver within the university, either as a staff group or more. What we wanted to encourage more of was a mixed group of staff and students. And what that's allowed our students to do is to establish a garden project up in Elms Village in our student accommodation, where they've worked along with our gardening staff, conservation volunteers again, and the students up there. And the students come from a wide range of disciplines, not just environmental focused degrees, to develop a grow your own garden up there, where they're growing a whole range of vegetables and pollinators, pollinating flowers up there.
Great, that's superb. So as much as it's sort of an environmental project, it certainly sounds like it is a good public engagement program as well. And you've obviously got students working alongside staff as well. What happens with the veg when they're grown? Who gets to take those away?
Well, they belong to the students, so we would be very much encouraging the veg to stay there. Obviously, in Elms Village, we have a very vibrant student population, and it's populated throughout the year. So we would be encouraging our students up there and the staff up there to take that away and use it themselves. Yeah.
Superb. Well, it really sounds like the team has sort of taken the lead on engaging students and staff. At this point, I would like to open the session up for questions from attendees. But to kind of get the ball rolling, one thing that I have noticed over the last few months since lockdown began, really, is obviously the fact that more people are staying, at home, not only to work, but less people are eating out, and the amount of waste they're using is increasing. Is this something that you within the team have noticed from sort of colleagues or students?
Yeah, most definitely. I myself have noticed it. I mean, I'm usually working Monday to Friday, 9 to 5. I've got 2 kids, so it's very busy. But having spent so much more time at home, you become so much more aware of, in particular, plastics and the plastic packaging, because you're making all your meals at home, and you have the packaging waste that comes with that. I think on the other side of it, you're also, I think what COVID has kind of encouraged us to try and do a bit more is plan our meals, because at the start of COVID we couldn't go to the supermarket whenever we wanted to, so you had to sit down and work out, right, what am I going to need for the week ahead, because I don't want to stand in the queue in the supermarket, and number 2, I don't even know if it's going to be there when I get there. Pasta and rice were totally sold out. It was a bit crazy, so it definitely has made us think more about that. And so in response to that, what we've tried to do with our Sustainability Champion Network across the university and our students is to try and point them towards resources and top tips that can kind of help them be more sustainable in lockdown. So one of the things that we've been doing is signposting to some of the stuff around food waste and what you can do to reduce food waste in the first place by only buying what you need, but actually what recipes and things how can you actually use that food if it is going to waste, so you're getting the most out of what you have in your store cupboard, because you can't necessarily get to the supermarket as easily, and what you have in the fridge as leftovers as well.
Okay, just looking at the questions that have come in. One question here asks, we're a working family. We have 3 children, and time can often be of the essence. Are there any basic tips that I can factor into a daily routine to help me become greener?
I think one of the most basic things that we need to be more aware of is how much we buy, and just buying less stuff. That is one of the kind of key things that everybody can do, because everything that we use has inherently had an environmental impact from how it has been produced, from all the resources that have gone into making it. Then we use it, and then we have to either recycle it or dispose of it, we have to get rid of it at the end of its life in some way. So just being more conscious conscious about what you're buying, and I know that's challenging. I have 2 kids and I go around, I shop in Tesco's and it's kind of easy to just throw stuff into the trolley without 100% really thinking about, am I actually really going to use that? Do I really need that? And then I guess the one thing that everybody can do and should be doing anyway is, just where you try to recycle as much as you can, and to try and get your kids involved in that, and make that part of your just regular routine and what you do.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I have a small son of my own, and it's sort of, you become acutely aware of having to sort of ingrain that sort of thing into sort of the children when they're quite young. You mentioned, you sort of mentioned working with children. Are there any sort of basic activities that you would suggest you can do with children that would perhaps make the whole subject of recycling more accessible to them, easier for them to understand?
Well, from my own experience, I have a 7-year-old who's just turned 7. So as part of his actual lockdown homework this year, we had to do a wee project on plastic waste. So we had to just go on the internet and look and create a poster about what happens to our plastic and why it's important that we need to recycle it and dispose of it properly and cut down on it. So there were a couple of actually really good video resources on there that break that down really easily, and actually cartoons like Octonauts, if your children are of toddler age, are actually really good at taking big environmental problems and breaking them down into kind of easy to understand kind of terminology for kids. So as part of that project with Ryan, we went on, had a look at some of the pictures, not some of the really nasty pictures, because there's some you have to be careful about some of the things that you're looking at, but the BBC, for example, have some really good bite-sized resources in there around recycling and plastics and waste for kids, but actually following that up then with going out and helping them understand what goes into which recycling bin. It helps their colours as well, because they're all different colours, and helping them follow through with the action, because a big challenge at the moment, everybody's aware of, for example, plastic waste in the ocean, and that it's a bad thing, and that we need to try and cut down on our unnecessary use of plastic, and we need to recycle and dispose of it properly so it isn't getting into the waterways where we do use it. But there's a bit of a gap between people being aware of that and then actually doing it. So in trying to raise awareness, we need to make sure that we're kind of following up with what are the actions that you can actually take to address that.
Mm-hmm. You've obviously spoken a fair bit about recycling, and one of the questions we've had come in is that I've read that recycling itself can take a lot of energy. Is it more important to recycle or reuse? Is there any advice you'd give around that?
Yeah, if you look at we talk about the waste hierarchy, and the top of the waste hierarchy is the first thing that you should do is refuse, and that's trying to use less stuff. So not buying something or taking something if you don't actually need it. And the next is to reduce, and the next then is to reuse, and then after that recycle. So yeah, you should be, if you can reuse something as much as you can, then you're getting the energy out of it that you wanted from it, from what it was actually first intended to be used. So recycling is the next thing that you should do to reuse.
Okay, very good. Another question that's coming here relates to sustainable development goals. Are you able to explain how the work of the university feeds into those?
Yeah, so recently actually our Vice-Chancellor just announced that our Sustainable Development Goals will actually be integrated into the university's corporate plan that they're working on. So that will be the next 5-year plan for the university. And that's looking at how we will integrate SDGs into our curriculum, so our teaching and learning programmes for our students, how we will integrate them into our research and also then our operations and also the outreach and community work that we do as a university. And for those who mightn't be familiar with what the Sustainable Development Goals are, because they're not something that is kind of talked about and look, you know, in the public domain very often, as it were. Basically, the UN came up with a strategy 3 or 4 years ago as to how we can make the world a better place by 2030, and it assigned 15 goals within that strategy that we needed to achieve. And those goals cover climate action, they cover energy, clean energy and affordable energy, but they also look beyond the strictly environmental areas of sustainability, and they talk about gender equality and the need of good healthcare for all. So it's looking at the social and it's looking at the economic as well. So as a university, our corporate plan will be integrating those and we will be aligning what we do according to those goals.
Super. Thank you for explaining sustainable development goals in a wider context as well. I'm sure it's something that a lot of people may have heard of, but few are actually familiar with it. At the beginning of the session, we spoke about lockdown and how that has sort of affected people's own awareness of the amount of waste they're producing. There's a question here that asks, do you think lockdown generally has had a significant positive impact on the environment?
The optimist in me would love to say that yes, it has for that brief moment, but already I can see, you know, more traffic on the roads. As you know, there was a lot of media attention that there was a real cut in carbon emissions over the period of lockdown. The challenge is that as we come out of lockdown, we're ramping up. Industry is ramping up. We're likely that we're probably not going to see any long-term impact of what happened carbon emissions wise from lockdown. But what I do see is people much more aware of their local environment because during lockdown we had to stop and like it just gave you time to appreciate what was around you. There was a silence that we didn't have before. Awareness of what's in your own garden and what's in your local environment as regards wildlife and flowers. People have had more time to spend in their garden, try things that they hadn't done before, cycle more, for example. So from that point of view, I hope that it has encouraged more people to take on sustainable behaviours and be more aware of their environment. But on a more global scale, I'm probably a bit more sceptical as to if it's really had the impact. I guess what it has shown is that people can change. COVID made us change behaviours that if we had have asked ourselves, would we have been willing to stand in a queue outside Tesco's like the year before, we would have probably said no. If we'd been asked not to go to our parks, if we'd been asked to stop going to restaurants, you know, people can do things, socially distance, for example, when they're asked, government takes charge and takes the lead on it. So in that way, it shows us that, you know, people can change behaviours, but I guess on a more long-term impact of what that short period of time and slowing down has had, I don't think it's going to make a massive difference. Sorry.
No, cautious optimism then, optimism. I think I'd sort of mirror some of the comments you made. I live very close to the waterworks in North Belfast, and I certainly noticed that, during lockdown when I was sort of going for a daily walk around there, you could, there was a peacefulness due to the lack of vehicles, etc. What was interesting, and there may well be no scientific basis for this at all, is that when lockdown started and there was a distinct lack of vehicles on the road and no aeroplanes going overhead. There was about 6 weeks of absolutely glorious weather, which seemed quite unseasonable. Is that just a mad coincidence?
Oh, I guess that's a coincidence, a very good coincidence, mind you, because I was working from home with 2 young children, so I can't imagine what it might be like to have to do that if it was in the dark of winter or a very wet spring, summer in Northern Ireland. I think what it did do though was we have a whole group of staff who have gotten into growing their own because the weather was so nice and we all wanted to get outside and do things. So people have been more appreciative of what you can do in your own garden. And I myself have grown lettuces, we've grown strawberries, and we've planted, I've got my, and we were talking about children before, it's been a great opportunity to actually get children involved in the garden and get planting and help them understand, you know, what wildlife and nature is actually in their own back garden, and let them understand that from a seed our food grows. You know, we're so busy that we just put food on the table and we don't really talk about where it comes from or what has been involved in getting it there. But if you're able to, you know, what I've learned from just growing the lettuces and strawberries, it's just your children can kind of understand that process and get involved in it and feel proud of it as well, that they've actually succeeded in doing something, and then they've eaten it, and they've never gotten them to eat lettuce before, but they ate the lettuce that they grew themselves.
That's super. Are there particular vegetables that would be an easy option for someone perhaps who hasn't grown before?
Well, I've never grown before, and I grew those lettuces, so I would say yes, lettuces and peas are things that are relatively easy to grow, because they grow quickly, because children want to see results. They don't want to wait for 6 months down the line. Those are things that work really well. We have a great gardener in Queens, Paul Wallace, our head gardener, and our gardening team there, so they've been providing us with some guidance of some easy things that you can grow in the garden. So yes, peas and lettuces is what they said as their go-to to do. And also then, you know, it's not just about vegetables, but it's trying to plant flowers and that are going to attract the bees, and pollinator plants. So that's one of the things that I would also be encouraging people to do. So when you are going to put things in your garden, try and get things that will attract, that are good for the birds and the bees.
Brilliant. It's great that you mentioned bees, because we just had a question come in on the back of us speaking about gardening, which was, should we be encouraging bees into our gardens? Are there any other particular, people speak a lot about, you know, the importance of bees, and I think generally people are quite aware of that. Are there any other, is there any other wildlife that perhaps we should be trying to attract into?
Yeah, so we've actually, as a university, we've just signed up to be a hedgehog friendly campus. So the hedgehogs are actually in significant decline in the UK. I think in the last 10 years their species has halved, though don't quote me on that. But so what we did actually a couple of weeks ago was we worked with the hedgehog, and I can't remember, hedgehog association, can't remember their name 100%, but I can find it out, to help us encourage us how to do a hedgehog survey in your back garden, which is something I've got getting the kids involved in again. And it's a bit of citizen science as well, because you can upload your results onto the internet to their website, and then they can kind of track where people do have hedgehogs and where they don't, because they're trying to see what they can do to encourage the species. So some of the things that they talk about doing is leaving gaps and fences so that hedgehogs can actually move easily around the garden, and leaving, you know, trying to leave hedgerows and natural, instead of putting in fences, keeping in your hedgerows and things like that, so they're natural habitats for hedgehogs to live in.
Brilliant. I had a question come in here that asks, now that lockdown seems to be drawing to a close, with more people being encouraged to go into work, I've been considering travelling in via my own transport, i.e. bike. Is there anything that the university, any initiatives the university operates to encourage staff to use bikes?
Yeah, within Queen's we have the Cycle to Work scheme. So a member of staff can apply to buy the bike through the university at a reduced cost because it's salary sacrificeable. So basically you're buying a bike less and you're getting taxed less and you're paying less national insurance that year, so you're getting a saving on your bike. We've recently just increased that up to £3,000 so that people would be able to purchase an e-bike on that scheme, because in Northern Ireland just a few months ago the Assembly introduced or amended their legislation which permitted e-bikes in Northern Ireland. Prior to that you were going to need a licence, and it was quite complicated to actually ride an e-bike legally. Now that's been changed. We've been able to increase our scheme so that you can actually go on and buy an e-bike. And I think one of the positive things during lockdown that we have seen within Northern Ireland, I think Belfast is one of the second or third most congested city in the UK, but we have now got dedicated cycle lane coming in through the Dublin, from Bankmore Street up the Dublin Road as far as Botanic Avenue, and we have pedestrianisation of Hill Street in the city centre. That's a massive change to where Belfast was pre-COVID, and that's, I guess, because we have a minister in charge who has taken the direction and made a difficult decision on that mightn't have been a popular decision, but is a very good decision, I think, for the city and for Belfast. And within Queen's, we want to see how we can, connect up with those cycle lanes and continue to improve the infrastructure around the university, so that more of our staff feel comfortable and safe getting on their bike and cycling to the university. As well as the Cycle to Work scheme at Queen's, we also have staff or showers and changing facilities available to your staff, as well as secure cycle storage and non-secure cycle storage across the university. We've also got really good deals on D-locks, which is the best way to secure your bike. So they're available from our security at a good, I can't remember exactly what the cost is, but it's a very good rate in comparison to what you would be buying one in the shop. So we really do encourage where staff can to try and use the option of cycling to work. It doesn't need to be 5 days a week, just 1 day a week. Small changes are what matter.
Brilliant. There's a lot that what you've said during the session, Sarah, that really does give cause for optimism, both in terms of what the university is doing and the takeaways that people can sort of use in their everyday lives. We are coming towards the end of the session now. There's one more question I'd like to fit in, and it's someone who's saying that during lockdown, I was doing quite a bit of volunteering, delivering meals to people in the community. I would still like to continue volunteering in some sort of form. Can you advise of any outlets whereby I could volunteer in an environmental capacity?
Yeah, there's a number of environmental organisations that we work with, such as Conservation Volunteers and RSPB, who offer a range of volunteer opportunities to people. Very much kind of practical, getting involved on site via surveying, for example, or planting schemes that are always looking for volunteers and would be really eager, I'm sure, to speak to you. Yeah, and we can point you in those direction after the session if that would be useful.
Brilliant. Well, look, Sarah, thank you very much for taking part today, and thank you to everybody who's attended and asked questions. Are there any particular social media sites or areas of the Queen's website that you would advise anyone to check out after this session, Sarah?
Yeah, we have a Twitter account. It's Green at Queens, and we tweet out what's happened at the university, and also tips for people can kind of take account of in at work and in their lives. And we also are available on the Queen's website. If you probably easiest for Google sustainability at Queen's, and we'll come up there. Can I just add one wee thing, Andy, before we go? I guess the thing is, it's not just about the climate change and trying to be more sustainable is a big challenge, but it's going to require everybody to get involved. It's not just up to government, it's not just up to us, it's everybody getting involved. And it's much better that we're all trying to do small amount of things, really, or, things imperfectly, rather than a few people doing things 100% right. It needs all of us just even try doing it the best we can in whatever imperfect way we can, to really make so that we can all make a difference.
Superb. That's a great sentiment to end on. Thank you very much. I would just like to finish by extending my thanks again to Sarah and to everyone that's attended today. The next session will be taking place on the 23rd of July at 1:30. The theme will be resilience, lessons from sport, in which we'll be speaking to colleagues from QUB Sports. We hope that you can attend that. I hope everybody has a good bank holiday weekend, and we will see you soon. Thank you very much.
Thank you.